Hey, Chris, how you doing today?
Doing great. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. Hey, I want to thank you for joining us today on this virtual conference. Thank you for taking the time out of your day. I know you could have been doing anything today, but you've chiseled out a good hour to kind of talk about branding and kind of what you do.
Of course, I'm glad to do it. Thank you for having me on.
Chris Reinecke is a freelance creative director in the DFW area with a career that spans over 12 years, serving companies of all sizes, including Sally Beauty, Solera, Raising Cane's, Hagar Clothing, and Zales, as well as a number of other medical practices, ad agencies, and local businesses. He specializes in demystifying the creative process by building processes, guidelines, and tools that A, communicate with leaders that need to know about design, and B, free up creatives to deliver on what they do best. So without further ado, I want to welcome Chris to our sessions, our virtual sessions. So first question that we have is, branding is a term. So what does it actually mean that, the best ways of branding? Why does it matter in my business? Kind of give us an idea as far as what branding is.
So yeah, branding itself is actually a very broad term. People tend to think of their brand as their logo. They get a logo created and they tend to push back thinking, I already have a brand. But in actuality, a brand is something far more abstract. So if your business were a person, your logo would be the face, the visual look and feel of your business would be the way that that person presents themselves, to their hairstyle, the way they dress, and the brand itself is your reputation. Your reputation isn't something that you can just manipulate or force on people. It comes from a deeply held sense of values and belief in who you are. So it's something that you attend to carefully, and it comes out of a deeply held sense of beliefs. So building a brand begins with knowing who you are. Not only do you need to know who you are, you also need to know who you're for and the value that you offer. So I usually recommend that startups, they don't necessarily need to go all in on brand strategy right away. Because that, in my opinion, and some people may differ in opinion with me on this, but it's a lot like asking a 6-year-old, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or who do you want to marry? And then holding them to that answer when they're an adult. You just can't do that. You have to give things some time to mature and for things to see how things play out. In the case of Nike, it always was an athletic brand. The founder, Phil Knight, did a little research on this recently, and he wasn't a professional athlete ever, but he was a college track star, right? So, and star may be overstating, but he knew what athletes went through in their training regimen. So he knew enough about the audience to be able to cater to them. And then he tailored the rest of the brand around what they needed. So even though he was more of a business person than a professional athlete, he cared enough about what they went through in order to give them what they needed. So you can see it all throughout the brand ethos. We know that Nike is for athletes. It's everywhere. It's in their marketing. It's in their strategic sponsorships. It really is who they are. So you can even see it from the very subtle things like their logo and their name. Nike being the goddess of victory. The little swoosh is actually kind of a wing like you'd see on Achilles, shoes. So it's got this very Greek, but it's very subtle, right? Like people don't see those things and automatically go, oh, Nike is the goddess of victory. Not everyone knows that. It's a subtle thing. So that's not what's carrying the brand along. It's everything else that they're doing through their sponsorships, through the athletes that they bring in. I mean, even like in the last 10 years, they've taken the idea of dancers as athletes, and they have a corporate dance sponsorship as well, the first of its kind. And they keep doing this. They build on the concept of what an athlete is, and they can do that because they have the brand equity. People know Nike is for athletes, and anything Nike touches now is kind of like the golden touch.
Right.
It's like, oh, they must be athletes too, and it's true. It always was true, but they're bringing attention and awareness to that through their name recognition. So really what Nike has done is they've taken a market that they do know about, and they've studied it, they cared for it, they've nurtured it, and they're building and continue to build this brand around what the needs of the people are. And I think that's where things start. You have to know who your target is and what they need and how you can address that. So some questions you want to ask yourself when you're building brand are, first off, who is my desired audience? In order to identify that, you need to not just pick someone randomly. You know, I'm a middle-aged white guy. I'm going to automatically think of middle-aged white guys as I'm building my business because that's what I know. That's what I relate to. But the reality is I need to identify who has the interest and the budget to buy my product. So we just talked about Nike, but let's say that you're building a sneaker store. You're doing high-end collectible sneakers.
Right.
So you've got the sneaker store. It's online. It's maybe you've got a visual footprint in place for that. And if you are building that business with yourself in mind, then you may be missing out on a lot of opportunities. So that's why I say to wait before going all in on brand strategy. It does need to be done, but if you do it too soon, you're going to find out, you're going to miss out on the opportunity to find out who those true customers are who have the opportunity and the means to buy from you. So that high-end sneaker store we're talking about, you may get 6 months in and realize that you intended to sell to 18 to 24-year-olds, you know, because they'll identify with and love the value of these collectible sneakers, but it's actually the 30-year-olds who have the disposable income, or the soccer moms who are doing it for their kids. Like, you may be completely shocked. And that has to come with time and experience and a little bit of measurement under your belt. So the things that you want to look out for as you're building your brand: who is your target audience? Then you want to know, what does this user or customer, what do they want to accomplish? What are their goals? What's important to them? Where are their pain points? And then what do I offer? What does my business do that helps them meet that need? And then knowing that you're not alone, what am I doing that sets me apart from my competitors? And then finally, what is the emotional or personal benefit that really hits home, that keeps your customer coming back? So why would your customer choose you over someone else? Not just because you offer better service or because you offer a better price, but what is that connection that they really feel with you when they do business with you? And a lot of it comes down to values. We talked about that a little bit earlier, and I'm going to keep hitting on this. When a company is clear about their values and they establish those values, when you really stand for something, your customers know. And your customers want to be part of something bigger than themselves. So they start to create a tribe around the things that they find important. If you're for sustainability and customers who are for sustainability, you can take REI as an example. They are all about sustainability and I think a little bit about preserving the national parks. People who care about those things buy religiously from REI. You know, they could get sporting goods from anywhere, but they choose that brand because it holds to their values. So it's about building trust and about building that tribe of people who have genuine interests where you do. And of course, once you tap into that tribe and you've got those loyal brand advocates who are willing to help spread the word, you're tapping into something that only your customers can do for you. You know, there's a lot of ways to spend money in marketing. You know, I mean, there's no shortage. The minute you open your doors or launch your website, you're getting phone calls all over the place. People want you to spend money with them on marketing. The marketing that matters is the marketing that activates people. So that's why brand matters. You're building loyalty with your customers, and you're helping unleash the power that only they have to help you multiply your success.
So with everything that's going on today, obviously branding has kind of taken a shift, just business in general. And so where do you see the future of branding?
You ask, I have a few thoughts on this. So bear with me because there's a few different avenues I want to go through first before I get to what I really believe to be the heart of the matter. But trend-wise, I think we're seeing some basic things start to emerge already. There's a rise in solopreneur businesses as people start to try to supplement their income. Maybe they're on furlough or they've been laid off. So, they want to keep their side hustles up and running. So that's definitely one thing that's going to happen. I think there's going to be, some saturation in the market because you've got established businesses and then a lot more solopreneur side hustle activity as well. But I don't think that's going to affect established businesses. I just think it means that there's going to be more money flowing and more money flowing directly to individuals, which I think would be a good thing as well. But that's going to happen. I also think that I'm already seeing, on the individual side of things, there's a rise in sustainable practices. So people within my circle are starting small gardens. They're doing a little bit of subsistence type farming. People with backyard chickens, things like that. And that's, that's not branding related, but it tells us a little bit about how people are paying attention to what they spend. And I think that will go forward into the business culture. So businesses will take a similar approach. They're going to be more sustainable in the way that they move forward. So their teams are going to be leaner and they're going to be more conscientious of their budget. What they spend, they're going to be looking even more closely than ever before for a strong ROI, which does mean that there will be a lot more attention to digital media on the corporate side of things. But I think that creates a lot of opportunity for omnichannel marketers in smaller spaces. So that'll be fun to see. But even more interesting than all of these broad changes, I think, is the way that businesses are likely to respond and adapt, just through creative means. So I'm a student of art history. One of the things that I've noticed over time, just watching different movements and seeing different things in art history, is that whenever there's a massive change in culture, it's usually followed by a strong push toward technology and then a strong push against technology, which is very interesting. It's kind of a rebellion in its own sense. So in the mid 1800s, you had the Industrial Revolution. There was a lot of growth in mass production, a huge shift toward technology. There was steam-powered engines on almost everything. You had the locomotives, you had the boats. It was making the world smaller. But also the mass production side of things was really growing. And so out of that, we saw the artisans and purists start to develop the arts and crafts movement, which was really kind of like this John Henry-esque man versus machine type dynamic where they were realizing that the human touch created something special where the machine built kind of created in mass, but it wasn't unique. It wasn't one of a kind. It was just a lot. And so the arts and craft movement really celebrated the man-made. And so I think with that in mind, we're facing a 2 to 3 headed movement. The first is a push toward technology. A second is a rise in old tactics. And then the third is a fusion of the two. So on the technology side, we're probably going to see more, and we're seeing it now as well, more online delivery services. We're going to see a broader application of streaming technologies. So right now we're using it for a lot of video, right? We're using streaming for video. I think in the last year or so, we've seen a rise in streaming for gaming, but I think there's other ways we could probably do that as well. That'll be interesting to see what pops up. So it's not just music, video, and gaming. I think you can use streaming for more than entertainment. But we're also going to see, and we're already seeing now, an increase remote work, e-learning, and video conferencing. And then finally, I think what would be really interesting is, we have stores over the last year or so who have implemented, I guess it's maybe the last 5 years, they've implemented more touch screens in their stores. Well, now that we're more conscientious of viral spreading and disease, um, that's, people are going to look at that and say, that's just a giant petri dish. I want nothing to do with it. And stores and companies are going to be pulling away from that because it's a liability. So I think it's going to be on technology companies. They're going to lean into things like a no touch technology. Maybe it's gesture based. Maybe it's something, there are companies out there that are experimenting with reading brain waves as a user interface. So, I mean, there could be some fun things to come out of that. We'll see. And then we're going to see a rise in the old tactics. So even though technology is pushing us, even the current need is pushing us toward contact-free, I think the other side of things is that all the extroverts in the world right now are just bored out of their minds. They're anxious. They're like, they just want to hug somebody, like they want to shake somebody's hand. They want that personal interaction. And so I think we'll see a rise in old tactics, personal, handwritten letters, thank you notes. It's not going to come in mass, but there's going to be a resurgence like we haven't seen in the last 20 years. It's not ever going to be what it once was, but it will start to pop back up even right now, So we're going to see that. We're going to see an emphasis on, I mentioned earlier that companies are going to pull back on what they spend and spend more intentionally. I think that it really places the emphasis on targeting now versus, let's just get as many people as we can. The more the merrier. Now it's going to be, and it should have always been. I think we're just slow to adopt sometimes. Instead of focusing on mass, we're going to focus on those quality connections, the real SQLs and MQLs, the marketing qualified leads and sales qualified leads. We're going to be focusing on targeting those who have the likelihood to buy. And it's all about being intentional instead of just throwing money at things and hoping they stick. So, that applies in the old way of doing things. So we typically think of that as being a digital practice. I think what we're going to see now is those methods are going to be applied more toward print. Instead of every door direct mail, we're going to have more sales qualified lists to work from. And that's going to happen on a smaller, more granular level than we've seen it before. And I think that's a good thing. It means that your business, you can focus. You may have only been in operation for a year and you've only got yourself and one other employee, right? You can employ this. You can print 5 or 6 or something and mail it out. That's something that technology is already doing. But then I think also with the fusion of technology and old tactics, we're also going to see print methods change a little bit. I think there's going to be some introduction of like antimicrobial and antibacterial substrates, like specialty papers that you can print on, as well as the inks. And then of course, my favorite, I love talking about swag. Everybody likes getting free stuff. It's fun. But how do we do that in this world where we're very careful about spreading germs, and in this world where we don't want to waste money? So I think it's going to be the swag is less kind of afterthought and more thoughtful. If you're going to do it, you're going to do it with a purpose. Maybe somebody's sending out customized toilet paper, that would be one of the more novelty, silly ways to go about it. But there are devices out there that use UV light to clean devices like your phone. So custom branding that and sending that to a specialty client, it would be a good way of doing things. So how do you respond to adversity is the true test of character. If you built your customer base around that you're people first, that you're value centric, but then at the first sign of trouble, you've laid off your workforce, your customers are going to remember that. If you run a restaurant, for instance, and you've set yourself apart by focusing on quality ingredients, but then, you know, times are hard and you start to skimp on that quality. You know, you're compromising on quality, then you're creating your own brand crisis. Now, sometimes difficult situations require us to pivot. We have to change. Sometimes we're going to change strategies altogether. And that's okay when you're doing it carefully and strategically. So I'm not saying that you need to be immovable, like you can't change ever, but you should have a strong sense of who you are and what you're not willing to compromise to get ahead. Because in the end, when you survive this, your customers are going to appreciate the lengths that you've gone through to uphold your values. As I said earlier, they're looking for brands to align with that share their values. So your values are their values. If you compromise, then you've alienated them. But if you fight hard to uphold what they believe in, they're going to appreciate it.
So Chris, man, hey, I thank you, man, for taking the time to talk to us today. You know, you've answered a lot of questions I had. And you touched on a lot of key points as far as branding concepts. So, you know, in the time of things, you know, how do people get a hold of you if they have more questions or if they have, you know, more business that they would need to throw your way?
Yeah, so if anyone wants to reach me, they can visit my website at reinecke-design.com. And on my About page, there's a form where they can fill out. Again, they can just type up a little bit of their story, their name, introduce themselves. I'd love to hear kind of where they're coming from and really hear how this episode affected them. That would be great. And I want to take a minute here as well to thank you, Mario. This has been a blast. It's been a thrill to be a part of this with you and the Entrepaidneur team. So again, thank you so much for having me on today.
Hey, anytime. And everyone who's tuned in, please stay tuned for the next episode that's coming up as we dive deeper into the whole branding practices and also talk about a little bit about financial stability and what you need to do to prepare for you know, the upcoming ways of conducting business and kind of situate your company to be in a better place once this whole COVID kind of, you know, subsides.